Wait, you're my wife. He couldn't believe his eyes. Husband shocked to see wife's beauty and couldn't control himself. Falls in love with her. My beautiful family, welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. Every time I share a story, it feels like I'm holding you close, wrapping you in love. You're not just my audience. You are my heart, my soul, my cherished family. Before we begin, let's take a moment for a special prayer. May love fill your heart, peace calm your mind, and joy follow you wherever you go. May every burden be lifted, every dream be blessed, and may this family always remain united in love and light. Now, my darlings, tell me, are you enjoying my stories? From 1 to 10, how would you rate them? Do you love passionate romance, deep drama, or something else entirely? I want to know. And to my new family members, drop your name and city in the comments. Let us welcome you with the warmth and love that makes this family so special. How was the last story? Did it touch your soul? Did it make your heart race? Tell me everything. Now, my loves, get cozy, because today's story will take you on a journey you'll never forget. Let's begin. The morning sun painted golden streaks across Manhattan's glass towers as Barnaby Bartholomew stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office on the 87th floor of the Bartholomew Tower. His tall frame cast a long shadow across the imported Italian marble floors, his reflection a stark reminder of the power he wielded in this city of dreams and ambitions. At 52, he cut an imposing figure, his dark hair elegantly streaked with silver at the temples, his steel blue eyes carrying the weight of empire building, and his bespoke Tom Ford suit a subtle declaration of his status in New York's upper echelons. The weight of his Patek Philippe watch felt heavy on his wrist as he checked the time, 7:15 a.m. The city below was already pulsing with energy, yellow cabs dotting the streets like tiny insects from his vantage point. This view had witnessed countless victories, mergers, and acquisitions that had built Bartholomew Industries into the corporate giant it was today. But this morning felt different. The stakes were higher, the air charged with anticipation. His executive assistant, Miranda Blackwood, had arranged the files on his mahogany desk with military precision, financial reports, market analyses, and at the center, a leather-bound dossier that demanded his attention. He lifted it with careful deliberation, though he'd memorized its contents over the past week. Sterling Tech Solutions, the fastest-growing tech company in the country and the key to Bartholomew Industries' future. The morning espresso from his private barista arrived as he settled into his ergonomic chair, the rich aroma filling the air. Taking a sip, he opened the dossier once again, his eyes drawn to the photograph that had haunted his thoughts since the merger talks began. Sutton Nola, CEO of Sterling Tech Solutions, 32 years old, MIT graduate, tech prodigy. The photograph didn't do justice to her accomplishments. In less than a decade, she had transformed a startup in her garage into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. Her innovations in artificial intelligence and sustainable technology had revolutionized the industry. The press called her the Queen of Silicon Valley, but Barnaby knew better than to underestimate her based on flashy headlines. He turned to the financial statements, though the numbers were already etched in his mind. Sterling Tech's valuation had tripled in the past year alone. Their proprietary AI algorithms were years ahead of the competition. The merger would be the largest in Bartholomew Industries' history, a $50 billion deal that would reshape the technological landscape. The intercom buzzed, Miranda's voice crisp and professional. "Mr. Bartholomew, the board members are arriving for the pre-meeting briefing." "Send them in," he responded, straightening his Italian silk tie. One by one, they filed into his office, 12 men and women who had helped build this empire alongside him. Their faces reflected the gravity of the day ahead. "Ladies and gentlemen, Barnaby began, his deep voice commanding immediate attention. "In 2 hours, we'll be meeting with Sterling Tech's executive team. This merger isn't just about market share or profit margins. It's about the future, our future." The morning light caught the crystal decanter on his bar cart as he poured water for each board member. The routine was familiar, but his mind was already racing ahead to the upcoming meeting. He had orchestrated hundreds of negotiations in this very room, but something about this one felt different, personal. As he briefed the board on the final strategy, his thoughts kept drifting to the dossier. Sutton Nola's achievements were remarkable. Patents in quantum computing, breakthrough research in neural networks, philanthropic initiatives that had transformed STEM education in underserved communities. But it was the less obvious details that intrigued him. Her perfect attendance record at board meetings, her hands-on approach with research teams, her ability to quote classics in interviews while discussing coding algorithms. The board meeting concluded, and Barnaby found himself alone again, watching the morning traffic below. His empire stretched across continents, but today everything hinged on this meeting. The merger would either cement his legacy or become his greatest miscalculation. At precisely 9:55 a.m., Miranda's voice came through the intercom again. "Sir, Sterling Tech's team has arrived." Barnaby straightened his cuffs, a habit from his early days in business. "Escort them to the main boardroom. I'll be there in 5 minutes." The walk to the boardroom was one he had made countless times, yet today each step felt weighted with destiny. The hallway's wood-paneled walls displayed the history of Bartholomew Industries. Photographs of his father breaking ground on their first factory, newspaper headlines announcing their rise to fortune, awards and accolades that marked their ascent to corporate royalty. He paused at the boardroom's double doors, adjusting his tie one final time. Through the frosted glass, he could see the silhouettes of people settling into their seats. Taking a deep breath, he pushed the doors open with practiced confidence. The moment Sutton Nola turned to face him, time seemed to stop. She stood near the window, the morning light creating a halo around her elegant frame. Her crimson suit was a bold choice, tailored perfectly to her athletic build. Her locks were swept into an intricate updo that spoke of both sophistication and cultural pride. But it was her eyes that caught him off guard, deep brown pools of intelligence and determination that seemed to see right through his carefully constructed facade. "Mr. Bartholomew," she said, extending her hand. Her voice was melodious yet commanding, with a hint of a southern accent that added warmth to her professional tone. "Thank you for having us." The moment their hands met, Barnaby felt an unexpected surge of electricity course through him. Her grip was firm, confident, matching his own. "Ms. Nola, welcome to Bartholomew Industries." As they took their seats at opposite ends of the massive boardroom table, Barnaby noticed the subtle details that the dossier had missed. The way she arranged her documents with precise movements, the vintage fountain pen she placed carefully beside her notebook, the quick but thorough glance she gave each person in the room. Cataloguing, analyzing, planning. The next 3 hours were a masterclass in corporate negotiation. Sutton handled each point of discussion with remarkable insight, challenging his assumptions with data-driven arguments that both impressed and unsettled him. She didn't just know her company's numbers, she understood the underlying patterns, the market forces, the human elements that drove success. During a particularly heated discussion about AI implementation timelines, she leaned forward, her eyes locked with his. "Mr. Bartholomew, your projection assumes a linear development curve, but technology doesn't work that way, especially not in quantum computing. Let me show you why." She rose gracefully, moving to the digital display board. As she explained the exponential nature of technological advancement, her passion for the subject was infectious. Barnaby found himself drawn into her vision of the future. a future where their combined companies could revolutionize not just industries, but human potential itself. The morning stretched into afternoon, and as their teams broke for lunch, Barnaby noticed something unusual. The typical tension that accompanied such high-stakes negotiations had transformed into something else, an electric current of possibility that charged the air between them. "Ms. Nola," he said as their teams filed out, "would you join me for lunch in my private dining room? There are some aspects of the merger I'd like to discuss in more detail." She smiled, a subtle curve of her lips that suggested she knew there was more to his invitation than business. "Of course, Mr. Bartholomew, though I hope you're prepared for a thorough discussion of quantum neural networks over your appetizer." As they walked together down the corridor, their steps naturally falling into sync, Barnaby felt the weight of his empire on his shoulders. But for the first time in years, that weight felt like an opportunity rather than a burden. In Sutton Nola, he had found not just a potential business partner, but an equal. Someone who could challenge him, inspire him, and perhaps even understand him. The merger documents lay forgotten in the boardroom as they entered his private dining space, the Manhattan skyline spreading out before them like a canvas of possibilities. Neither of them could have known in that moment how their lives would intertwine, how their professional alliance would evolve into something far more profound, or how this day would mark the beginning of a story that would capture the imagination of New York's elite society. As Barnaby pulled out her chair, their eyes met again, and in that brief moment, both felt the subtle shift in the universe, the first tremor of a seismic change that would reshape not just their companies, but their hearts. The merger that would dominate headlines was already in motion, but the real story, their story, was just beginning to unfold. The chapter ends with them seated across from each other, the city sprawling beneath them, unaware that their carefully planned merger would lead to an unexpected merger of souls, a union that would challenge society's expectations, heal past wounds, and prove that love knows no boundaries in the glittering world of power, ambition, and destiny. Chapter 2. Power Play. The weeks following their initial meeting transformed the 87th floor of Bartholomew Tower into an arena of intellectual sparring and unspoken attraction. Each morning, Sutton Nola's arrival sent a ripple of energy through the building's sophisticated security systems. Her biometric signature now as familiar to the AI-powered protocols as Barnaby's own. The click of her Louboutin heels against marble floors became a sound he unconsciously listened for, his body tensing with anticipation before she would appear. Today marked their 15th day of negotiations, and Barnaby found himself in his office earlier than usual, reviewing the latest counteroffer from Sterling Tech. The dawn painted Manhattan in shades of amber and rose, but his attention was fixed on Sutton's handwritten notes in the margins of the document, precise observations that challenged his assumptions and revealed the brilliance of her strategic mind. "The quarterly projections need revision," her elegant script declared beside page 37. "Your growth model doesn't account for quantum computing's impact on market dynamics." He smiled, remembering their heated debate from yesterday. Sutton had stood at the boardroom's digital display, her crimson blazer a stark contrast against the blue-white glow of financial projections, as she systematically dismantled his traditional approach to market analysis. Her passion for innovation was infectious, her intelligence formidable, and her presence increasingly distracting. Miranda's voice interrupted his thoughts through the intercom. "Mr. Bartholomew, Ms. Nola has arrived early. She's requesting a private meeting before the general session." Barnaby adjusted his titanium cufflinks, a gift from his late father upon taking over the company. "Send her in, Miranda." Sutton entered his office like a force of nature, the morning light catching the subtle gold threads woven through her deep blue dress. She carried her signature crocodile leather portfolio and a tablet displaying real-time market data. but it was the determined set of her jaw that caught his attention. She had come armed with more than just numbers. "Good morning, Mr. Bartholomew," she said, her voice carrying that hint of southern warmth that had begun to feature in his dreams. "I trust you've reviewed our latest proposals." "Indeed," he responded, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "Your team's analysis is thorough. But you disagree with our valuation of the AI division," she stated, not asked, as she took her seat. The scent of her perfume, something exotic and elegant, drifted across his desk. "I disagree with your assumption that traditional market metrics don't apply to bleeding-edge technology," he countered, leaning forward. "Innovation is essential, Ms. Nola, but so is stability." Sutton's dark eyes flashed with challenge. "Stability?" She pulled up a holographic display from her tablet, filling the air between them with glowing data points. "Let me show you something, Mr. Bartholomew." She rose and circled his desk, her proximity sending his pulse racing despite his iron self-control. Standing beside his chair, she manipulated the holographic display with graceful gestures. "These are our AI learning curves over the past 18 months. Notice the pattern." Barnaby found himself distracted by the subtle scent of jasmine in her perfume, the way her shoulder barely brushed his as she leaned over to adjust the display. But the data quickly captured his full attention. The patterns were unlike anything he'd seen in 30 years of business. "Exponential growth in unexpected sectors," he murmured, standing to get a better view. They were now shoulder to shoulder, both bathed in the blue light of the hologram. "But the energy consumption is negligible," she finished his thought, turning to face him. Their proximity was suddenly electric. "We've developed quantum-based cooling systems that—" "That's impossible," he interrupted, though his voice held more admiration than doubt. "The power requirements alone would—" "Nothing is impossible, Mr. Bartholomew," she said softly, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made the air between them feel charged. "Isn't that why you built all this? Because you saw possibilities where others saw obstacles?" The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken recognition. Here was someone who understood not just the numbers and strategies, but the vision, the driving force that turned dreams into empires. For a brief moment, Barnaby forgot about mergers and market shares, lost in the depth of her gaze. The spell was broken by Miranda's voice on the intercom. "Sir, the board members are arriving for the 9 o'clock session." Sutton stepped back, professional composure sliding back into place like armor. "We should continue this discussion during the general session. I believe the board would be interested in our cooling system innovations." Throughout the day's negotiations, their earlier moment of connection hummed like an undercurrent beneath the professional discourse. Board members exchanged glances as Barnaby and Sutton engaged in verbal chess matches over valuation methods and integration timelines. Their responses to each other grew increasingly layered with subtle meanings and unspoken challenges. "Your proposal for the tech division restructuring is ambitious," Barnaby noted during the afternoon session, his voice carrying a hint of admiration beneath the criticism. "Ambition built your empire, didn't it, Mr. Bartholomew?" Sutton countered, her smile both challenging and knowing. "Or did you reach the top by playing it safe?" The board members shifted uncomfortably at her boldness, but Barnaby found himself fighting back a smile. Her fearlessness was refreshing in a world of careful corporate maneuvering. She wasn't just matching him move for move, she was forcing him to elevate his game. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the boardroom, their teams had reached another temporary impasse. The merger's complexity had grown beyond initial projections, with each new layer revealing both opportunities and challenges that would require careful navigation. "We'll need to extend the negotiation timeline," Barnaby announced, his eyes finding Sutton's across the table. "Perhaps another 3 weeks to properly address all aspects of the integration." 3 weeks, she replied, arching an elegant eyebrow. "Your caution is showing, Mr. Bartholomew, but I agree, this merger deserves our full attention to detail." As their teams packed up for the day, Sutton lingered behind, organizing her notes with methodical precision. Barnaby found himself doing the same, stealing glances at her in the warm light of sunset. The day's intellectual sparring had left him energized rather than drained, a sensation he hadn't experienced in years. "You're different than I expected," he said finally, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. She looked up, her eyes catching the golden light. "Different good or different bad?" "Different, intriguing," he admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. "Most people in this room either fear me or try to flatter me. You do neither." "Fear and flattery are poor foundations for success," she replied, closing her portfolio with deliberate care. "I prefer honest challenge and mutual respect." "Even when that challenge comes with significant risk?" he asked, moving closer to her side of the table. Sutton stood, smoothing her dress with graceful hands. "The greatest rewards often do, Mr. Bartholomew. Isn't that what makes the game worth playing?" Their eyes met again, and the chemistry that had been building all day crackled between them like static electricity. In that moment, both recognized that their game had evolved far beyond mere corporate strategy. "Join me for dinner," he said suddenly, the words escaping before he could analyze their wisdom. "There's a private room at Le Bernardin. We can discuss the quantum cooling systems in detail." A smile played at the corners of her mouth. "Are you sure that's wise? The press is already speculating about our lengthy negotiations." "Let them speculate," he replied, his voice low and confident. "I've never based my decisions on public opinion." She considered him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she nodded. "Very well, but I warn you, my appetite for discussion is as robust as my appetite for fine cuisine." As they walked together toward the elevator, their steps in perfect sync, both were acutely aware that they were crossing an invisible line. The professional distance they had maintained was beginning to blur, replaced by something far more dangerous and exhilarating. The elevator doors closed behind them, and in the confined space, the tension between them became almost palpable. Sutton's perfume filled his senses, while Barnaby's commanding presence made her pulse quicken, despite her carefully maintained composure. "You know," she said softly as they descended, "this merger could change everything." Barnaby looked down at her, struck by how the elevator's soft lighting highlighted the elegant lines of her face. "I'm counting on it," he replied, his voice carrying a weight that suggested he wasn't just talking about business anymore. As they emerged into the lobby, the evening light streaming through the vast windows, neither could deny that their power play had evolved into something far more complex and compelling than either had anticipated. The merger negotiations had become a dance, each step bringing them closer to a partnership that would transcend business and challenge everything they thought they knew about power, success, and the capacity of the heart to rewrite the rules of engagement. The chapter closes as they step into his waiting Bentley, Manhattan's lights beginning to twinkle around them like stars, both aware that their carefully constructed professional boundaries were starting to crumble in the face of an attraction that defied corporate strategy and social expectations. The power play that had begun in the boardroom was evolving into something far more personal. A game where the stakes were no longer measured in dollars and market shares, but in heartbeats and unspoken desires. Chapter 3. The Gala. The annual Tech Innovation Gala transformed the Metropolitan Museum of Art into a glittering wonderland of innovation and elegance. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors, while holographic displays showcased the year's breakthrough technologies along the grand staircase. Barnaby Bartholomew adjusted his custom Tom Ford tuxedo as he ascended the steps, each movement measured and deliberate, though his mind was elsewhere, wondering if she had arrived yet. The past 3 weeks of negotiations had left him more intrigued by Sutton Nola than he cared to admit. Their dinner at Le Bernardin had stretched into 3 hours of conversation that ranged far beyond business, revealing depths to her that the corporate dossiers had never hinted at. Her passion for quantum physics was matched by her love of classical music. Her technological genius was tempered by a deep understanding of human nature. Each layer he discovered only made him hunger for more. The great hall hummed with the elite of New York society, tech moguls, venture capitalists, and innovation leaders mingling beneath the vaulted ceilings. Barnaby accepted a flute of champagne from a passing waiter, nodding to familiar faces while his eyes scanned the crowd. He told himself he was merely being strategic. After all, their merger was still the talk of Wall Street. But deep down, he knew his anticipation had nothing to do with business. "She hasn't arrived yet," came Miranda's knowing voice beside him. His executive assistant had an uncanny ability to read his thoughts, but her team confirmed she's on her way. Barnaby took a measured sip of champagne. "I assume you've arranged the seating as discussed?" "Of course, sir. Ms. Nola's place is next to yours at the primary table, as befitting the merger partners of the year." Miranda's slight emphasis on merger partners didn't escape his notice. The next 20 minutes passed in a blur of handshakes and small talk. Barnaby moved through the crowd with practiced ease, his reputation for being intimidating keeping most conversations professionally brief. But his awareness remained fixed on the grand entrance, waiting. When Sutton finally appeared at the top of the stairs, time seemed to stop. She wore a gown of liquid gold that caught every light in the room, the fabric clinging to her curves before flowing to the floor like molten metal. Her locks were arranged in an intricate crown of braids interwoven with subtle golden threads that matched her dress, but it was her presence that commanded attention, regal, confident, and absolutely breathtaking. Barnaby felt his heart skip a beat, a sensation he hadn't experienced in years. He watched as she descended the stairs, every head turning to follow her progress. The dress revealed her shoulders and elegant collarbones, while a tasteful slit offered glimpses of her legs as she moved. Her skin glowed like polished bronze under the chandelier's light, and her smile held just a hint of knowing amusement at the stir she was causing. Their eyes met across the crowded hall, and the connection was instant and electric. Sutton's smile softened into something more personal, more intimate, meant only for him. Barnaby found himself moving toward her without conscious thought, drawn by an irresistible force. "Mr. Bartholomew," she greeted him, her voice carrying that blend of professional courtesy and private warmth that he had come to crave. "You clean up rather well." "Ms. Nola," he returned, taking her offered hand and bringing it to his lips in a gesture that walked the line between old-world courtesy and subtle intimacy. "You look absolutely stunning." A slight flush colored her cheeks, though her composure never wavered. "Flattery, Mr. Bartholomew? That's not like you." "Merely stating facts," he murmured, tucking her hand into the crook of his arm. "Shall we make the rounds? I believe half the tech world is waiting to bend your ear about the merger." They moved through the crowd together, their chemistry obvious to everyone watching. The way they anticipated each other's movements, finished each other's sentences, and maintained subtle physical contact spoke of a connection that transcended business. Barnaby found himself hyper-aware of every brush of her arm against his, every time she leaned close to whisper an observation about their fellow guests. The dinner portion of the evening found them seated side by side at the primary table, their chairs perhaps a fraction closer than strictly necessary. Under the table, her knee occasionally brushed against his, sending sparks of awareness through his body. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, ranging from the latest quantum computing breakthroughs to their shared love of obscure jazz recordings. "Dance with me," Barnaby said suddenly as the orchestra struck up a waltz. It wasn't a question, but his eyes held a hint of vulnerability that only she could see. Sutton's smile was answer enough. He led her to the dance floor, aware of the countless eyes following their movement, but focused solely on the feel of her hand in his. As he drew her into his arms, the rest of the world seemed to fade away. They moved together as if they'd been dancing for years, her body fitting perfectly against his larger frame. His hand, at the small of her back, felt the warmth of her skin through the thin fabric of her dress, while their joined hands seemed to pulse with shared electricity. "Everyone's watching us," she murmured, though her eyes never left his face. "Let them watch," he replied, his voice low and intimate. "I'm only interested in one person's opinion tonight." Their waltz carried them around the floor, each turn bringing them slightly closer together. The professional masks they wore began to slip, replaced by something more real, more vulnerable. Barnaby found himself lost in the depths of her dark eyes, seeing past the brilliant CEO to the woman who had begun to haunt his dreams. As the music softened, their steps slowed until they were barely moving, just swaying together in their own private world. Sutton's hand had somehow migrated from his shoulder to the nape of his neck, her fingers playing with the silver-streaked hair there. The touch sent shivers down his spine. "We should be careful," she whispered, though she made no move to pull away. "The press is having a field day with rumors about us already." Barnaby's hand tightened slightly at her waist. "Since when do either of us let public opinion dictate our choices?" The orchestra transitioned to a slower piece, and Sutton moved incrementally closer, her head coming to rest against his chest. Barnaby closed his eyes, breathing in the jasmine scent of her perfume, knowing they had crossed a line, but unable to bring himself to care. They danced through 3 more songs, their bodies drawing closer with each passing moment. The heat between them built slowly, but inexorably, like a supernova in slow motion. When Barnaby's lips brushed against her temple, Sutton's sharp intake of breath was audible only to him. "Perhaps some air," he suggested, his voice rougher than usual. She nodded, allowing him to guide her toward the museum's private balcony. The New York night spread out before them, a tapestry of lights and possibilities. Sutton moved to the railing, the city lights playing across her golden dress. Barnaby stood behind her, close enough that she could feel the heat of his body, but not quite touching. "This complicates things," she said softly, though she leaned back slightly, bridging the gap between them. Barnaby's hands came to rest on the railing on either side of her, effectively caging her with his body. "Life is complicated," he murmured, his lips close to her ear. "The question is whether it's worth it." Sutton turned in the circle of his arms, looking up at him with eyes that held both desire and uncertainty. "Is it worth potentially derailing a $50 billion merger?" Instead of answering, Barnaby lifted one hand to cup her cheek, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. Sutton's eyes fluttered closed at his touch, her lips parting slightly. The tension between them built to an almost unbearable level. When their lips finally met, it was like a circuit completing. The kiss began soft, tentative, but quickly deepened as years of loneliness and weeks of building attraction crystallized into this one perfect moment. Sutton's hands fisted in his lapels, pulling him closer, while Barnaby's arms wrapped around her waist, lifting her slightly off her feet. The kiss seemed to last forever, and end too soon. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, the world had shifted on its axis. They stood together in the moonlight, foreheads touching, neither willing to completely break the connection. "We should get back," Sutton whispered eventually, though she made no move to leave his embrace. Barnaby brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch lingering. 5 more minutes, he negotiated, making her laugh softly. When they finally returned to the gala, their subtle dishevelment and the heightened color in their cheeks told their own story. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of stolen glances and electric touches, their professional facades barely containing the passion that had been unleashed between them. As the event drew to a close, Barnaby helped Sutton into his private elevator, their bodies gravitating together in the enclosed space. "Let me take you home," he said softly, his hand caressing her bare shoulder. Sutton looked up at him, her eyes dark with desire, but also clear with purpose. "Not tonight," she said, though the regret in her voice was obvious. "We need to think this through, figure out what it means for everything we're building." Barnaby nodded, understanding but not happy about it. He placed a gentle kiss on her forehead, then another, lighter one on her lips. "For the record," he murmured, "I think it's worth it." The chapter ends as they part ways in the quiet hours of the morning, both knowing that their lives had irrevocably changed. The merger that had brought them together now seemed secondary to the merger of hearts that had begun on this magical night. As Barnaby watched her car disappear into the pre-dawn darkness, he knew with absolute certainty that no business deal, no matter how massive, could compare to the riches he had discovered in Sutton Nola's kiss. Chapter 4. Hidden Truths. The morning after the gala dawned with golden light streaming through the windows of Bartholomew Tower. Barnaby found himself drawn to the archives, a climate-controlled sanctuary 40 floors below his office. The vast room housed not just corporate history, but personal memories, photographs, letters, and most precious of all, Victoria's journals. His fingers trembled slightly as he traced the spines of leather-bound volumes until he found what he sought: her final year's journal. The leather was butter-soft from constant handling, the pages filled with her elegant script. Though he had read it countless times during his grieving, today he was searching for something specific, any mention of Sterling Tech's origins. Settling into a leather armchair beneath a window, he opened the journal. The kiss he had shared with Sutton at the gala still lingered on his lips, filling him with equal parts exhilaration and guilt. For the first time since Victoria's passing, he had felt truly alive again, but that very feeling made him question everything. As morning light painted patterns across the floor, memories flooded back. Victoria in this very room, writing in her journal, always with a knowing smile when he asked what she was documenting, her mysterious trips to MIT that she'd been so excited about, the way she'd spoken about the future of technology with renewed passion in her final months. Then he found it, the first mention of Sutton, dated 6 months before Victoria's diagnosis. "Met an extraordinary young woman at MIT today. Sutton Nola. Brilliant doesn't begin to describe her. Her quantum computing theories could revolutionize everything we know about processing power. More than that, there's a fire in her that reminds me of someone. Perhaps Barnaby in his younger days, before the weight of empire settled on his shoulders." More entries followed, painting a picture he had never known existed. Second meeting with Sutton today. Her mind works in fascinating patterns, seeing connections others miss entirely. She showed me her initial designs for quantum cooling systems. The applications are staggering. Must find a way to support this work without Bartholomew Industries overshadowing her growth. Approved first grant for Sutton's research through my personal foundation. She tried to decline, proud and independent, just like someone else I know. Had to convince her that accepting help doesn't mean surrendering control. If only Barnaby could learn the same lesson. They're so alike in some ways, brilliant, driven, but carrying wounds from past disappointments. The revelations kept coming. Victoria had been more than just Sutton's mentor. She had been the architect of Sterling Tech's foundation, believing in Sutton's vision when others dismissed it as too ambitious. She had guided Sutton through the early stages of building her company, all while keeping it separate from Bartholomew Industries, to ensure Sutton could grow independently. A memory surfaced, Victoria excited about a new investment opportunity, insisting on using her personal funds rather than corporate resources. He had been too busy with acquisitions to pay much attention. Now he realized she had been investing in Sutton's future, in their future, though neither of them had known it. His hands shook as he reached the entries from her final months, the handwriting growing shakier, but the mind behind it still sharp and clear. Sutton visited today. She doesn't know about the cancer. I made her promise to keep building, to never let fear of failure hold her back. She has what it takes to change the world. But more than that, she has what it takes to challenge Barnaby, to wake him from the comfortable numbness he's built around himself. They could be extraordinary together. The last entry, dated 3 days before her death, was incomplete. Must tell Barnaby about Sutton. They could achieve so much together. Two brilliant minds, two passionate souls. If only. The journal slipped from his fingers, landing softly on the carpet. All this time he had thought meeting Sutton was chance, a simple merger opportunity, but Victoria had seen it years ago, had planted the seeds for their paths to cross. His phone buzzed, Sutton's name lighting up the screen. Her message was professional, discussing merger details, but ended with a personal touch. Last night still feels like a dream. Before he could reply, Miranda appeared in the doorway. "Sir, there's something you need to see." In his office, Miranda pulled up a series of documents on the holographic display. "I was reviewing Sterling Tech's early funding sources for the merger documentation. I found this." The display showed a complex web of investment channels, all leading back to a single source, the Victoria Bartholomew Foundation for Innovation. But it was more than just early-stage funding. Victoria had structured a series of patents and intellectual property rights that were fundamental to Sterling Tech's success. His mind raced back to various moments, Victoria's insistence on maintaining her own foundation separate from corporate philanthropy, her frequent trips to MIT that she said were about nurturing future innovation, the way she had smiled knowingly whenever Sterling Tech was mentioned in the news. A second revelation hit him, Sutton's quantum cooling system, the technology that had first drawn his attention to Sterling Tech, had been developed using research grants from Victoria's personal foundation. She had believed in it when every other investor said it was impossible. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Bartholomew, Ms. Nola is here for your 2 o'clock meeting." Looking up, he saw Sutton entering his office, stunning in a deep purple suit that reminded him of their dance the night before. But now, seeing her through the lens of Victoria's words, he noticed new details, the way she carried herself with the same quiet confidence Victoria had possessed, the intellectual fire in her eyes that Victoria had recognized and nurtured. "Barnaby," she said softly, using his first name for the first time, outside of their intimate moment on the balcony. "About last night." He rose from his chair, moving around the desk to stand before her. The attraction between them was still electric, but now layered with the weight of hidden connections. "Sutton, there's something you need to know." Instead of speaking further, he led her to the leather couch by the window and handed her Victoria's journal, open to the first entry about her. He watched as she read, emotions playing across her face, recognition, remembrance, grief, and something deeper. "I never knew," she whispered, fingers tracing Victoria's handwriting. "She never told me about any of this. The foundation funding, yes, but this..." She looked up at him, eyes shining with unshed tears. "She wrote about you too, you know. Not just here, in our conversations. She would tell me about this brilliant, driven man who needed someone to challenge him, to make him see beyond the empire to the possibilities. A memory struck her, and she reached for her briefcase, pulling out a small notebook. She gave me this before the end. I've never shown anyone. Inside were Victoria's notes from their MIT meetings, but more than that, her observations, her hopes, her plans for both their futures. Watch Sutton present her quantum theories today. The passion in her voice, the way she refuses to accept conventional limitations. She reminds me so much of Barnaby when we first met. They both burn with the same fire, the same drive to change the world. Separately, they're extraordinary. Together. Barnaby sat beside her, close enough to feel the warmth of her body, but not touching. "Is that why?" she asked, her voice catching. "Is that why you've been drawn to me? Because of Victoria?" He turned to face her fully, taking her hands in his. "No," he said firmly. "What I feel for you is entirely its own truth. Finding out about Victoria's role, it doesn't change how my heart races when you enter a room, or how your mind challenges and excites me, or how desperately I wanted to kiss you last night." A tear slipped down her cheek, and he caught it with his thumb. "But it does change things," she said softly. "It changes everything and nothing," he replied, drawing her closer. "Victoria saw something 5 years ago that we're only discovering now. She knew we would need each other, not just for business, not just for innovation, but for healing, for growth, for love." The word love hung in the air between them, neither ready to acknowledge it directly, but both feeling its truth. Sutton leaned into him, her head finding that perfect spot on his chest that seemed made for her. "I miss her," she whispered. "She believed in me when no one else did, pushed me to dream bigger, to never settle for less than extraordinary." Barnaby's arms tightened around her. She had a gift for seeing the best in people, for seeing connections others missed. He pressed a kiss to her temple, breathing in the familiar scent of jasmine. "But this thing between us, this is ours, Sutton. Victoria may have seen the possibility, but we're the ones choosing to make it real." They sat together as the afternoon sun painted the Manhattan skyline in shades of gold, both journals resting between them like bridges between past and present. The merger documents lay forgotten on Barnaby's desk, but a different kind of merger was taking place, one of hearts, of histories, of destinies long intertwined without their knowledge. "What do we do now?" Sutton asked finally, her fingers intertwined with his. Barnaby lifted their joined hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles. "We honor her vision, not just for business, but for life. We build something extraordinary together, just as she knew we could." "Together," Sutton repeated, turning her face up to his. When their lips met this time, it wasn't just passion that flowed between them. It was understanding, acceptance, and the beginning of something deeper than either had imagined possible. The chapter ends as they sit together in the fading light, Victoria's journals bearing witness to their embrace. The hidden truths that could have torn them apart had instead woven their stories more tightly together, creating a tapestry of love, loss, and destiny that neither could have predicted. In the end, Victoria's final gift to them both wasn't just the business connection. It was the chance to find in each other the kind of love that transforms, heals, and builds empires of the heart. Chapter 5. Confrontation. The New York sunset painted clouds in shades of amber and gold as Sutton Nola stood in Barnaby's private office, Victoria's journals clutched to her chest like a shield. The past 24 hours since discovering their shared connection to Victoria had been a whirlwind of emotions, memories, and realizations that threatened to overwhelm her carefully maintained composure. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan's lights began twinkling to life, each one a star in an urban galaxy. But Sutton's mind was far from the view, lost in the pages of Victoria's writings, in the carefully laid plans that had brought her and Barnaby together. The weight of destiny pressed down on her shoulders, simultaneously comforting and suffocating. Barnaby watched her from behind his massive desk, his steel blue eyes tracking her movements as she paced the length of his office. The tension between them was different now, no longer just the electric attraction that had drawn them together, but something deeper, more complex, tinged with the shadow of the remarkable woman who had shaped both their lives. "Did you know?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "All this time, during the merger talks, the negotiations, did you know about Victoria's involvement in Sterling Tech?" Barnaby rose from his chair, moving to stand before her. In the fading light, his silver-streaked hair caught the golden hues of sunset, and his face held an expression she had never seen before, vulnerability mixed with a desperate need to make her understand. "No," he answered, his deep voice rough with emotion. "I swear to you, Sutton, I had no idea until I found her journal yesterday. Everything that's happened between us, every moment, every feeling, it's been real, untainted by the past." She studied his face intently, searching for any hint of deception. Finding none, she placed the journals on his desk with trembling hands. "She was everything to me. Barnaby, more than a mentor. She saw something in me when everyone else said my ideas were impossible. And now—" Her voice trailed off as memories flooded back. Late nights in MIT labs, Victoria's unwavering faith in her quantum computing theories, the gentle guidance that had helped shape her from brilliant student to powerful CEO. Each memory now carried new weight, new meaning. "Now you're wondering if what's between us is just the echo of her plans," he finished softly, stepping closer. "If we're just playing out some script she wrote years ago." Sutton's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "Aren't we? Look at all this." She gestured to the holographic displays still showing Victoria's investment trails. She orchestrated everything, the funding, the patents, even our meeting. It was all part of her vision. "Victoria was brilliant at seeing possibilities," Barnaby said, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "But she couldn't dictate our hearts, Sutton. She couldn't create this fire between us, this connection that's been driving both of us crazy since the first day you walked into my boardroom." The warmth of his touch sent shivers down her spine, but she forced herself to step back. "Tell me about her," she whispered. "Tell me about the Victoria you knew. Not the business icon, not the visionary. Tell me about your wife." Pain flashed across Barnaby's face, but he nodded. Leading her to the leather couch where they had sat yesterday, he pulled her close, needing the physical connection as he opened up about his past. "She was extraordinary," he began, his fingers absently playing with one of Sutton's locks. "Not just brilliant and compassionate, but absolutely fearless. She saw right through my corporate armor from the day we met. Called me out on using success to hide from real connections." As night deepened outside the windows, they shared their memories of Victoria. Sutton told him about late-night discussions in MIT labs, about Victoria's unwavering faith in her quantum computing theories. Barnaby spoke of Victoria's passion for innovation, her dedication to supporting young entrepreneurs, her ability to see connections others missed. "She used to tell me," Sutton said, her head resting on Barnaby's chest, "that the greatest breakthroughs happen when brilliant minds collide, but she never mentioned you by name, just spoke about someone who needed to remember how to dream big again." A memory struck her, making her sit up suddenly. "Wait." She reached for her briefcase, pulling out a small, worn notebook. "She gave me this the last time I saw her. I haven't looked at it since." Together, they opened the notebook, finding Victoria's observations from their MIT meetings. But between the technical notes were personal insights that took their breath away. Watched Sutton present her quantum theories today, the passion in her voice, the way she refuses to accept conventional limitations. She reminds me so much of Barnaby. They both burn with the same fire, the same drive to change the world. Separately, they're extraordinary. Together. Barnaby's arms tightened around Sutton as they read. "She saw us so clearly," he murmured. "Even then." "Is that what this is?" Sutton asked, lifting her head to meet his gaze. Two brilliant minds colliding. His hand slid into her hair, cradling the back of her head. "This is so much more than that, and you know it. Yes, your mind challenges and excites me. Yes, our companies are perfectly aligned for innovation. But what I feel when I hold you like this, when I see your smile across a boardroom, that has nothing to do with business or brilliance." Sutton's hands fisted in his shirt. "I'm scared, Barnaby. Not of you, not of us, but of disappointing her memory. What if we fail? What if this merger falls apart because of our feelings? What if—" He silenced her with a kiss, pouring all his certainty, all his growing love into the connection. When they finally parted, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "Victoria didn't orchestrate this to watch us fail. She saw something in both of us, not just our potential together, but our strength to handle whatever challenges came our way. But the press, the board members, the shareholders—" Sutton protested weakly, even as her body melted further into his embrace. "We'll all have opinions," he finished. "They always do. But I've spent too many years letting public perception dictate my choices. Not anymore. Not with you." She pulled back slightly, her eyes searching his face. "What are you saying?" Barnaby stood, pulling her up with him. In the darkness of his office, with the city lights twinkling behind them like stars, he took both her hands in his. "I'm saying that I don't want to hide this. Hide us. Victoria's journals didn't create these feelings. They just showed us that someone else saw their possibility long before we did. And the merger?" she asked, though her eyes never left his. "Will succeed or fail based on its own merits. But this?" He pulled her closer, one hand sliding to the small of her back. "This is non-negotiable. I'm falling in love with you, Sutton Nola, and no amount of corporate politics or public opinion is going to change that." The tears she had been holding back finally fell, but her smile was radiant. "Victoria would love this, you know. She always said the best partnerships were built on both head and heart." "She was right about so many things," Barnaby murmured, brushing away her tears with his thumbs. "But finding you, falling for you, that was all us." As if to prove his point, he kissed her again, deeper this time, with all the passion that had been building between them since their first meeting. Sutton responded with equal fervor, her arms wrapping around his neck as she pressed herself closer. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, Sutton laughed softly. "What do we do now?" "Now?" Barnaby smiled, the expression transforming his usually serious face. "Now we build something extraordinary together, in business and in life. We honor Victoria's memory, not by following some predetermined path, but by being true to ourselves and what we feel." "Together," she whispered, echoing their word from yesterday. But now it held new meaning, new promise. "Together," he confirmed, sealing the promise with another kiss. The chapter closes as they stand entwined in his office, the ghost of Victoria's presence blessing their union rather than haunting it. The confrontation they had feared had instead become a confirmation of their feelings, their connection, their future. As the night deepened around them, they held each other, secure in the knowledge that while Victoria might have seen the possibility of their love, the reality of it was entirely their own creation, The merger documents still waited on Barnaby's desk, but they had discovered a truth more valuable than any corporate deal, that sometimes the greatest risks in life lead to the greatest rewards, and that love, when it's real, doesn't need justification or explanation. It simply is, as natural and inevitable as the sunrise that would soon paint the sky behind them in shades of hope and new beginnings. Chapter 6. Breaking Point. The media storm broke on a Wednesday morning with the ferocity of a hurricane. Barnaby was in his private gym on the 86th floor, completing his daily workout, when Miranda burst in, her usually composed face tight with concern. The tablet she clutched in her hands displayed headlines that would change everything. The Wall Street Journal blazed across the screen. Romance or revenge? The truth behind Bartholomew Sterling tech merger. Below it, a photo of him and Sutton dancing at the gala, her head resting intimately against his chest, his lips close to her ear. The article was brutal in its implications, suggesting their relationship had compromised the merger's integrity. Barnaby's heart raced, and not from his interrupted workout. He grabbed a towel, wiping away sweat as he scrolled through more headlines. The New York Times. Power couple or corporate scandal? Bloomberg. Bartholomew Industries Board questions CEO's judgment. Each article dug deeper, unearthing every detail of their growing relationship and twisting it into something tawdry and suspicious. The conservative board members are particularly vocal, Miranda reported, pulling up internal communications. Thompson has already called for an emergency board meeting. He's suggesting your personal involvement with Ms. Nola has clouded your business judgment. Barnaby's phone buzzed continuously with messages from board members, shareholders, and industry contacts. But the one name he searched for remained conspicuously absent. Sutton hadn't reached out since the story broke. After a quick shower and change into a charcoal Tom Ford suit, he strode into his office to find it already filled with his crisis management team. Their faces were grim as they presented the full scope of the media coverage. James Wilson, his PR director, looked particularly concerned. "Sir, the narrative is spinning out of control. The conservative board members are using this as ammunition to question not just the merger, but your leadership. Rodriguez is rallying support for a vote of no confidence." Miranda appeared at his elbow with his private phone. "Sir, Ms. Nola's assistant just called. Sterling Tech's board has called an emergency session as well." Barnaby's jaw tightened. He needed to reach Sutton to make sure they presented a united front against this storm. But before he could act, the headlines shifted again, turning even more vicious. Breaking news. Sterling Tech board member reveals inside information. The story quoted an anonymous board member claiming that Sutton had strategically seduced Barnaby to push through favorable merger terms. The insinuation made his blood boil. He tried calling Sutton directly, but her phone went straight to voicemail. Her assistant would only say she was in meetings with her board. The distance between them, so recently bridged by love and understanding, suddenly felt vast again. The day descended into chaos. Both companies' stocks took significant hits as investors reacted to the scandal. Conservative shareholders began demanding detailed explanations of every merger decision. Social media exploded with speculation about their relationship, with some painting Sutton as a calculating seductress and others portraying Barnaby as a predatory corporate raider. By evening, Barnaby had endured 4 hours of hostile questioning from his board. He defended their relationship fiercely, emphasizing that their personal connection had developed after the merger negotiations began. But he could see the doubt in their eyes, the whispered conversations that stopped when he approached. "The timing is too convenient," Thompson argued during the board meeting. "Sterling Tech was struggling with funding issues 6 months ago. Now suddenly there's a romance with one of the richest men in New York, and they get a premium valuation in the merger. That valuation is based on their quantum computing breakthroughs." Barnaby countered, his voice stern. Technology that was developed long before I met Sutton Nola, but the seeds of doubt had been planted. Even his strongest supporters on the board looked uncomfortable. The merger they had all celebrated weeks ago was now being painted as a love-struck CEO's folly. Finally escaping to his office as night fell over Manhattan, he stood at his window, Victoria's journal clutched in his hand. The truth of their connection, blessed by Victoria's foresight, felt pure and right, but the world was determined to soil it with suspicion and scandal. His intercom buzzed. "Sir, Ms. Nola is here." Sutton entered his office like a storm front, her usual grace replaced by tightly controlled fury. She wore a fitted black suit that made her look like a warrior ready for battle, but her eyes held pain beneath the anger. "Have you seen what they're saying about us?" she demanded without preamble. "About me." Barnaby moved toward her, arms opening instinctively, but she held up a hand to stop him. "Don't. I need to think clearly, and I can't do that when you're touching me." The rejection stung, but he understood. "We knew there would be opposition," he said carefully. "We can weather this together." "Together?" Sutton laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My board spent 6 hours today questioning every decision I've made since meeting you. They're suggesting I've compromised my company's future for what? A romance?" "For love," Barnaby said quietly, taking a step closer. "What we have is real, Sutton. Don't let them make you doubt that." She turned away, moving to the window where they had shared so many intimate moments. "Is it worth it? Everything I've built, everything you've built, are we really willing to risk it all?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. 1,000 times yes. But Sutton shook her head, tears gathering in her eyes. "You don't understand. Sterling Tech isn't just my company. It's Victoria's legacy. She believed in me, invested in me, helped me build something extraordinary. If I let personal feelings compromise that—" "Victoria wanted this," Barnaby insisted, pulling out her journal. "She saw the possibility of us, not just as business partners, but as—" "Stop!" Sutton's voice cracked. "Please, just stop. Victoria's dead, Barnaby. And while she might have had dreams for us, the reality is that our relationship is threatening everything she helped us build." He moved behind her, close enough to feel the heat of her body, but not touching. "So what are you saying? That we should end this? Pretend we don't feel what we feel?" Sutton's reflection in the window showed tears running down her cheeks. "I'm saying we need to be smart. Put some professional distance between us until the merger is complete. Show everyone that our business decisions aren't compromised by emotions." "That's not living, Sutton, that's hiding." He reached for her, but she stepped away. "Maybe hiding is what we need right now." She turned to face him, her expression breaking his heart. "I've worked too hard, come too far, to let them reduce me to just your lover. I need to protect my company, my reputation, my—" "Your heart," he finished softly. The silence between them stretched, heavy with unspoken words and suppressed emotions. Finally, Sutton squared her shoulders, though her voice trembled. "I think we need some time apart, to let things calm down, to prove that we can be professional about this. And us? What happens to us while we're being professional?" She reached up, touching his face with trembling fingers. "I don't know. I just know that right now. Being together is hurting everything we've both worked for." Barnaby caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "You're wrong. Being apart is what will hurt us. The press, the boards, the shareholders, they don't get to decide what's right for us. But they do get to decide the fate of our companies," Sutton whispered, "and right now they're deciding that our love is a liability." The word love hung between them, simultaneously binding them together and tearing them apart. Barnaby wanted to argue, to fight, to convince her that running away wasn't the answer. But he could see the torment in her eyes, the way this scandal was crushing her spirit. "How long?" he asked finally. "How long do we have to pretend we're nothing more than merger partners?" Sutton stepped back, physically and emotionally distancing herself. "Until the merger is complete. Until we prove to everyone that our business decisions are sound and independent of our feelings. And then?" She met his eyes, and the love there gave him hope, despite her words. "And then, we'll see what's left of us after the storm passes." Barnaby watched as she walked to his door, every step widening the gulf between them. At the threshold she paused, but didn't turn around. "I do love you," she whispered. "That's why I have to do this." The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like breaking glass. Barnaby stood alone in his office, the city lights blurring through unshed tears. On his desk, Victoria's journal lay open to an entry he had read 100 times. "True love, like true innovation, requires courage, the courage to risk everything for something extraordinary." The chapter ends as Barnaby sinks into his chair, head in his hands. While 40 floors below, Sutton sits in her car, both of them surrounded by the wreckage of their carefully built worlds. The breaking point had come not from their love itself, but from society's inability to accept it. As Manhattan's lights twinkled around them like distant, unreachable stars, they faced their first night apart, each wondering if protecting their corporate empires was worth the cost to their hearts. In their separate solitudes, they both reached for their copies of Victoria's journal, seeking guidance from the woman who had seen their love's possibility. But even Victoria's wisdom couldn't ease the pain of choosing between professional duty and personal happiness, between the empires they had built and the love they had found. Chapter 7. The Choice. 2 weeks of professional distance had felt like an eternity. Barnaby stood in his penthouse office, watching the rain streak down the windows of Bartholomew Tower. The weather matched his mood, dark, turbulent, and showing no signs of clearing. Every board meeting, every negotiation session with Sterling Tech had become an exercise in restraint. Seeing Sutton but not being able to touch her, to hold her, to even speak privately with her, was a special kind of torture. The newspapers sat untouched on his desk, their headlines a daily reminder of the sacrifice they'd made. The business world had begun to calm, their professional distance strategy seemingly working. Stock prices were stabilizing, board members were settling, and the merger was back on track. By all corporate metrics, their choice to separate had been the right one. But Barnaby's heart told a different story. Every time Sutton entered a room, perfectly composed in her designer suits, maintaining that careful professional distance, he felt the weight of their choice. The light in her eyes had dimmed, her brilliant smile now rarely seen. They were both playing their parts perfectly, but at what cost? Miranda entered with his morning briefing, but her expression told him this was more than routine updates. "Sir, our intelligence division has picked up something concerning. Quantum dynamics is making moves." Barnaby's attention snapped into focus. Quantum dynamics was their biggest competitor, known for aggressive takeover attempts and cutthroat business practices. "Show me." The holographic display filled with data streams showing unusual stock movements. Quantum Dynamics had been quietly accumulating Sterling Tech shares through various shell companies. The pattern was clear. They were positioning for a hostile takeover. "They're exploiting the scandal," Miranda explained, pulling up more data. "Sterling Tech's stock has dropped 15% since the media storm began. They're vulnerable." Barnaby's hands clenched on his desk. The vultures were circling, ready to tear apart everything Sutton had built, everything Victoria had believed in. His mind raced through options, scenarios, possibilities. How much time do we have? At their current acquisition rate, less than 72 hours before they have enough leverage to make their move public. The choice crystallized in his mind with perfect clarity. He could maintain the professional distance Sutton had requested, protecting their public image but leaving Sterling Tech vulnerable. Or he could act to protect her company, risking further scandal but potentially saving everything she had worked for. Get me everything we have on quantum dynamics shell companies and contact our private banking partners. I need to move quickly and quietly. Miranda's eyes widened slightly. Sir, if you intervene personally, the media will have a field day, yes. But I'm not going to stand by and watch them destroy her company. The her in his sentence carried the weight of both Sutton and Victoria's legacies. The next 48 hours became a chess game played in shadows. Barnaby worked through 2 nights, orchestrating a complex series of stock purchases through various holding companies. Each move had to be carefully calculated to avoid triggering regulatory alerts or tipping off quantum dynamics. He was reviewing the latest transaction reports when his secure line rang. The caller ID showed a number he hadn't seen in years. Catherine Chen, Victoria's former attorney and confidant. Barnaby, her voice was warm but concerned. I've been watching the situation with Sterling Tech. Victoria left something for moments like this. His heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? There's a safety net she built into Sterling Tech's structure, a series of preferred shares held in trust, convertible under specific conditions. She never told Sutton about them, wanted her to succeed on her own merits. But she left instructions for me to reveal their existence if Sterling Tech ever faced a hostile takeover. Barnaby's mind raced with the implications. The shares would dilute any attempted takeover. Exactly, but there's more. The trust has specific requirements about who can purchase them. The buyer must be approved by both the trust administrators and Sterling Tech's CEO. A ghost of a smile touched Barnaby's lips. Even from beyond the grave, Victoria was looking out for them both. Send me everything, now. As rain continued to pour outside, Barnaby immersed himself in Victoria's legal documents. She had created an elaborate protection mechanism, ensuring Sterling Tech could never be taken over against Sutton's wishes. But accessing it would require him to reveal Victoria's final gift, and risk Sutton misunderstanding his intentions. Dawn was breaking when Miranda rushed into his office. Sir, Quantum Dynamics is making their move. They've called for an emergency meeting of Sterling Tech's board. Barnaby stood. Decision made. Get my helicopter ready and find Sutton immediately. The storm had intensified, making the helicopter flight to Sterling Tech's headquarters dangerous. But Barnaby's pilot managed to land them on the rooftop helipad just as Sutton was arriving for the emergency board meeting. She looked beautiful, even in her obvious distress, wearing a deep blue suit that made her skin glow like burnished bronze. When she saw him step out of the helicopter, her eyes widened with a mix of emotions: surprise, confusion, longing. Barnaby, what are you doing here? Protecting what matters, both professionally and personally. Before she could respond, her assistant rushed up. Ms. Nola, Quantum Dynamics CEO is already in the boardroom. They're presenting a takeover proposal. Sutton's face hardened with determination, but Barnaby caught her arm before she could leave. Wait, there's something you need to know first. In her private office, he quickly explained about Victoria's hidden safeguard and his own countermoves against Quantum Dynamics. With each word, he watched the emotions play across her face: shock, understanding, and something deeper. You've been secretly buying shares to block their takeover, she whispered, even after I asked for distance. Distance doesn't mean I stopped caring. He stepped closer, despite their agreement to maintain space. I couldn't watch them destroy everything you've built, everything Victoria believed in. Tears filled her eyes. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because you needed to prove your independence, to yourself, to your board, to the world. But now you need to know that you're not alone in this fight." Their eyes locked, and for a moment, all the professional barriers they'd erected crumbled. Sutton swayed toward him slightly, as if drawn by an irresistible force. "The board is waiting," her assistant's voice broke the moment. Sutton straightened, warrior queen once more. "Let's end this." The boardroom was tense when they entered. Richard Maxwell, CEO of Quantum Dynamics, stood at the head of the table with the confidence of a predator about to make a kill. His smile faltered slightly when he saw Barnaby. "Mr. Bartholomew, this is a private Sterling Tech board meeting." "Actually," Sutton's voice rang out clear and strong, "he has every right to be here, especially since he's about to become our largest shareholder." The next hour was a masterclass in corporate warfare. Barnaby and Sutton worked in perfect sync, revealing first his secret stock purchases that blocked Quantum's takeover attempt, then Victoria's protected shares that would ensure Sterling Tech's independence. Maxwell's face grew increasingly red as his carefully planned takeover crumbled. "This is manipulation. The SEC will find everything perfectly legal," Barnaby interrupted smoothly. "Unlike your attempts to hide stock purchases through shell companies." The Sterling Tech board members watched in amazement as Maxwell stormed out, his takeover dreams in shambles. But their amazement turned to something else as they witnessed the subtle interplay between Barnaby and Sutton. The perfect understanding, the shared looks, the united front they presented. "Perhaps," the board chairman said slowly, "we were hasty in our concerns about your relationship. Today has demonstrated that personal feelings haven't compromised either of your business judgment. If anything, they've strengthened both companies." After the board dispersed, Barnaby and Sutton found themselves alone in her office. The rain had finally stopped, and rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, painting the room in warm light. "You risked everything," she said softly. "Your reputation, your stockholders' trust." "No," he corrected, moving closer. "I risked everything when I let you walk away. Today I just proved what I've known all along, that loving you makes me stronger, not weaker." Sutton's professional facade cracked. In 2 steps, she was in his arms, their lips meeting in a kiss that spoke of 2 weeks of longing, of fear transformed into hope, of love stronger than corporate politics. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, she smiled through her tears. "Victoria would be proud, you know, of both of us." "She knew what she was doing," Barnaby murmured, holding her close. "Setting up those shares, bringing us together. She knew we'd be stronger together than apart." "No more distance?" Sutton asked, her hands fisting in his suit jacket. "No more hiding," he promised. "Let them talk. We'll show them that true partnership, in business and in love, is unbeatable." The chapter ends as they stand together at her office window, watching the sun break fully through the storm clouds. The choice Barnaby had made wasn't just about saving Sterling Tech. It was about proving that love didn't weaken business judgment but strengthened it, that sometimes the greatest risk was not taking one at all. In Victoria's journal, still sitting on Barnaby's desk 40 floors away, an entry seemed particularly pertinent. "True love, like true innovation, doesn't follow conventional wisdom. It breaks boundaries, challenges assumptions, and creates something stronger than the sum of its parts." As they stood together, watching their city gleam in the post-storm sunlight, both knew that they had crossed a threshold. The choice to fight for their love, to refuse to let society's expectations dictate their happiness, had transformed their relationship from a perceived weakness into their greatest strength. The merger of their hearts, like the merger of their companies, would create something extraordinary, just as Victoria had always known it would. Chapter 8. Trust Fall. The news of Barnaby's secret stock purchases broke on a stormy Thursday morning. Someone inside Bartholomew Industries had leaked the detailed records of his trading activities to the Financial Times, complete with timestamps and transaction amounts. The headline blazed across every financial news outlet: Bartholomew's secret moves to control Sterling Tech revealed. Sutton was in her brownstone's home office when her phone exploded with notifications. Her heart stopped as she read the article's implications, that Barnaby had been secretly plotting to take control of her company all along, using their romantic relationship as a smokescreen for a hostile takeover. Rain pounded against her windows as she tried calling him, but his line went straight to voicemail. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the breaking news coverage, each headline worse than the last. The stock purchases that had seemed so heroic yesterday were being painted as manipulative and calculating. The intercom buzzed, her security team announcing Barnaby's arrival. She found him on her doorstep, drenched from the rain, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. His eyes held a desperate intensity she had never seen before. "Sutton, I can explain everything." She stepped back, letting him into the warmth of her home. Water dripped from his coat onto the marble floor as they stood in her foyer, the tension between them electric but uncertain. "Then explain," she said softly, fighting the urge to brush his wet hair from his forehead. "Make me understand why the world thinks you've been plotting to steal my company." Barnaby ran a hand through his rain-soaked hair, his vulnerability showing through his usual composed facade. "The purchases were to protect you from quantum dynamics, yes. But the timing, someone's twisted it to make it look like I've been planning this for months." He pulled out his phone, showing her the original transaction records. "Look at the dates. Everything was done in the last 72 hours after we learned about Quantum's moves. But the leaked documents show transactions going back 6 months. Sutton's analytical mind kicked in as she studied the records. The discrepancy was clear. Someone had deliberately altered the timestamps to make Barnaby's protective actions look like a long-term scheme. "Who would do this?" she whispered. "Who had access to these records?" Before Barnaby could answer, both their phones buzzed with breaking news alerts. Someone had leaked their private emails to the press. Conversations from the early days of merger negotiations that, taken out of context, seemed to suggest their entire relationship had been strategically planned. Sutton sank onto her leather couch, the weight of implications crushing down on her. "They're trying to destroy us, not just professionally, but personally." Barnaby knelt before her, taking her hands in his. "Look at me, Sutton. Everything between us has been real. Every moment, every touch, every word." She met his eyes, seeing the truth there, but her voice trembled. "I know that, but the world can think what it wants," he said fiercely. "We know our truth." A crack of thunder punctuated his words as the storm intensified outside. Sutton stood, moving to her rain-streaked windows. "Do we? Sometimes I wonder if we've been fooling ourselves, thinking we could have both, love and power, personal happiness and professional success." Barnaby came up behind her, his presence warm and solid. "We can have both. We will have both. But first we need to find out who's trying to tear us apart." As if on cue, Sutton's phone rang. Miranda, Barnaby's executive assistant. "Ms. Nola, you need to turn on CNBC now." The television flickered to life, revealing Richard Maxwell, CEO of Quantum Dynamics, being interviewed live. His calculated smile sent chills down Sutton's spine. "The evidence speaks for itself," he was saying smoothly. "Barnaby Bartholomew has orchestrated the most elaborate corporate seduction in history. The question is, did Ms. Nola know she was being played, or was she just another pawn in his game?" Barnaby's hands clenched into fists. "That snake! He's behind this. The leaked documents, the altered timestamps. He's trying to force a regulatory investigation that would freeze both our companies. Sutton turned to face him, her mind racing. If the SEC investigates, the merger would be delayed indefinitely. Sterling Tech's stock would plummet, making us vulnerable to a real hostile takeover, Barnaby finished. Maxwell's playing a long game. Their eyes met, years of business instincts clicking into place. Without words, they moved in perfect sync, Sutton to her secure computer, Barnaby to his phone. They had built empires separately. Together they were unstoppable. The next hours passed in a blur of activity. They worked side by side in Sutton's home office, tracking down the source of the leaks, compiling evidence of Maxwell's manipulation. The storm raged outside, but inside, their focused energy created its own kind of electricity. "Here," Sutton said suddenly, pointing to her screen. "The metadata on the leaked emails. They've been altered, but there's a digital signature." Barnaby leaned close, his chest pressing against her back as he studied the code. His proximity sent shivers down her spine, despite the crisis they were handling. "That's Maxwell's chief technical officer's signature. He was sloppy." "No." Sutton turned in her chair, her face inches from his. "He was arrogant. They never expected us to work together to fight this. They thought their lies would drive us apart." The intensity of the moment caught them both. Despite the chaos swirling around them, despite the threats to everything they'd built, the connection between them remained unshakable. Barnaby's hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb tracing her lower lip. "They don't understand," he murmured. "Every attempt to separate us only makes us stronger." Sutton leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. "We should focus on the crisis." "This is the crisis," he said softly. "Trusting each other completely, absolutely, when the whole world is telling us not to. That's what will save us." She opened her eyes, seeing the truth of his words reflected in his gaze. "I do trust you," she whispered, "with my heart, with my company, with everything." The kiss that followed was different from their others. Not passionate or desperate, but deep and affirming, a renewal of faith in each other. When they parted, both knew what they had to do. Working through the night, they built their counterattack. Every piece of evidence Maxwell had leaked was meticulously analyzed, its manipulation exposed. Victoria's journal provided additional proof of the long-term vision for their company's cooperation, not as a hostile takeover, but as a partnership built on innovation and trust. As dawn approached, they were ready. Sutton stood in her living room watching the sky lighten over Manhattan. Barnaby came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Are you sure about this?" he asked softly. "Going public with everything, including Victoria's journal, our relationship, all of it?" She turned in his embrace, reaching up to straighten his tie. Somewhere during the night, he had shed his wet coat and jacket, rolled up his sleeves. She loved him like this, slightly disheveled, completely focused, utterly hers. "I'm sure," she said firmly. "No more hiding, remember? We show them what real partnership looks like, in business and in love." The press conference was scheduled for 9 a.m. They would stand together, present their evidence, and show the world that their love wasn't a weakness to be exploited, but a strength to be celebrated. As they prepared to leave, Sutton paused in her foyer, looking up at the man who had risked everything to protect her company, her dreams, her heart. "Whatever happens," she said softly, "I want you to know, choosing to trust you, to love you, is the best decision I've ever made." Barnaby pulled her close, his kiss tender but fierce. "We're about to show Maxwell and everyone else what happens when they try to come between us." The chapter ends as they step out into the morning light together, hands clasped, ready to face whatever comes. The fall they had taken, believing in each other when all evidence seemed to point to betrayal. had only made their bond stronger. As their car pulled away from the brownstone, both knew that this crisis had given them something precious, absolute certainty in each other's love and loyalty. Victoria's final journal entry, which they would soon share with the world, seemed written for this very moment. True love, like true innovation, thrives under pressure. It doesn't break in the face of challenges. It transforms them into opportunities for growth, for deeper connection, for triumph. Chapter 9. Scandal. The morning after their press conference, the business world was still reeling from Barnaby and Sutton's united stand against quantum dynamics manipulation. Their evidence had been irrefutable, their presentation flawless. Maxwell's scheme to drive them apart had backfired spectacularly, instead showcasing the strength of their partnership. But Thomas Henderson, a former board member of Bartholomew Industries with a long-standing grudge, had been watching the coverage with calculating eyes. In his Manhattan penthouse, he made a call to a contact at TMZ, offering them something that would shake both companies to their core. Barnaby was in his office reviewing merger documents when Miranda burst in, her face pale. "Sir, you need to see this immediately." The photos splashed across entertainment websites were devastating in their implications. Expertly doctored images showed Barnaby and Sutton in intimate encounters dated during his marriage to Victoria, complete with falsified timestamps and locations. The suggestion was clear: their relationship hadn't begun during the merger talks. According to these fabricated photos, they had been having an affair for years, even while Victoria was alive. His phone rang, Sutton's private line. "Turn on CNN," she said without preamble, her voice tight with controlled emotion. Henderson was being interviewed live, his rehearsed sincerity making Barnaby's blood boil. "I couldn't stay silent any longer," he was saying. "Victoria Bartholomew was not only my colleague but my friend. To see her memory dishonored like this." Barnaby's hands clenched into fists. "That snake. He's still bitter about being forced off the board 3 years ago." "This is different." Sutton's voice was steady, but he could hear the strain. "He's not just attacking our companies, he's attacking Victoria's memory, making it seem like we betrayed her." "Where are you?" "At the Sterling Tech office. The press is camped outside." "Stay there. I'm coming to you." Despite his security team's protests, Barnaby drove himself to Sterling Tech, taking back routes to avoid the media circus. The photos were spreading like wildfire across social media, each site adding its own sensational spin to the story. He found Sutton in her private office, standing at her window wall with ramrod-straight posture that betrayed her tension. She wore a deep purple suit that made her skin glow, but her face showed the strain of the morning's events. "They're saying I seduced you while she was dying," Sutton said without turning around, "that I used her mentorship to get close to you, that everything, the merger, our relationship, all of it, was built on betrayal." Barnaby crossed the room in 3 strides, turning her to face him. "No one who knew Victoria would believe that, and we can prove the photos are fake." "Can we?" Her eyes met his, filled with worry. Henderson was on the board then. His word carries weight. "His word carries bitterness," Barnaby corrected, "and we have something he doesn't know about." From his briefcase, he pulled out a small leather-bound book, different from Victoria's business journal. "Her personal diary. I've never shown it to anyone, not even you, but now—" Sutton's hands trembled as she took the diary. Inside, Victoria's private thoughts painted a picture completely at odds with Henderson's accusations. She wrote about her hopes for Sutton's future, her pride in watching her protégé grow into a powerhouse, and most importantly, she wrote about her wish that someday, after she was gone, Barnaby might find happiness again with someone who could match his passion for innovation and life. "She knew she was dying," Barnaby said softly, watching Sutton read. "She never told anyone, but she spent her final months trying to ensure both our happinesses. Tears fell onto the diary's pages as Sutton read Victoria's last entry. I see such possibility in them both. Separate, they're extraordinary. Together they could change the world. I only hope they find their way to each other when the time is right. We have to release this, Sutton said, looking up at him. It's the only way to fight Henderson's lies. Barnaby nodded, though sharing Victoria's private thoughts felt like another loss. We'll hold a press conference. Show the world the truth about her blessing. They spent the next hours preparing, working side by side in Sutton's office as their teams gathered evidence proving the photos were doctored. Technical experts traced the digital manipulation, establishing timelines that proved the impossibility of Henderson's claims. But it was Victoria's diary that would be their strongest weapon. Her words, written in her final days, showed not just her approval of their potential relationship, but her hope for it. She had seen in them both something they hadn't yet seen in themselves. As evening approached, they stood together in the green room of the Sterling Tech Media Center, preparing to face the press. Sutton adjusted Barnaby's tie, her touch lingering. "Are you sure about this?" she asked softly, sharing her private thoughts with the world. Barnaby caught her hand, pressing it over his heart. Victoria never believed in hiding truth. She would want us to fight for our love, for her legacy. The press conference was packed, cameras flashing as they walked in together hand in hand. Barnaby spoke first, his voice strong and clear as he addressed Henderson's accusations. Then Sutton took the podium, her presence commanding as she presented the technical evidence proving the photos were fake. Finally, together, they shared Victoria's diary. Barnaby read the entries about Sutton, his voice thick with emotion as Victoria's words described her growing admiration for the young innovator. Sutton read the passages about Victoria's hopes for their future, tears flowing freely as she shared the blessing their love had received before it even began. The media was silent as they finished reading, the power of Victoria's words hanging in the air. Then questions erupted, but with a different tone than before. The story was shifting from scandal to romance, from betrayal to destiny. Later that night in Barnaby's penthouse, they sat together on his balcony, looking out over the city lights. Victoria's diary lay between them, its pages now shared with the world, but its essence still intimately theirs. "She would be proud," Sutton said softly, leaning into his embrace. "Not just of us fighting for the truth, but of us fighting for each other." Barnaby pressed a kiss to her temple, breathing in the familiar jasmine scent of her perfume. She knew, even then, that we would need each other, not just for business success, but for completion. "Do you think Henderson will retaliate?" "Let him try." Barnaby's arms tightened around her. "We've proven that nothing can come between us. Not corporate schemes, not fake scandals, not even the ghost of past love." Sutton turned in his arms, her eyes reflecting the city lights. "Because our love isn't a betrayal of Victoria's memory. It's the fulfillment of her final wish." Their kiss was tender, healing, a reaffirmation of everything they had fought to protect. The scandal that was meant to tear them apart had only proven the strength of their bond, the truth of their love. The chapter ends as they hold each other under the stars, Victoria's diary, a testament to the blessing their love had always carried. The scandal had failed to break them because their foundation was built on truth, the truth of Victoria's wisdom, of their growing love, of destinies intertwined by a woman who had loved them both enough to ensure their future happiness. In the final pages of the diary, Victoria's words seemed to speak directly to this moment. Love, when it's real, doesn't need to hide from truth. It stands in the light, faces every storm, and emerges stronger. Barnaby and Sutton will face their challenges, but together they'll create something beautiful. A love story written in innovation, trust, and the courage to believe in second chances. Chapter 10. Revelation. The renovation of Victoria's old office at Bartholomew Industries wasn't supposed to be emotional. After 5 years, it was time to modernize the space while preserving its essence. But as workers carefully removed the old mahogany panels, they discovered something unexpected, a hidden wall safe that hadn't been included in any building plans. Barnaby stood in the doorway, memories washing over him as he watched the safe being opened. The room still held traces of Victoria's presence, the way morning light streamed through the windows at just the right angle, the subtle scent of roses that seemed embedded in the walls themselves. When the safe finally opened, it revealed a collection of sealed envelopes, each marked with specific dates and names. 2 caught his eye immediately. One addressed to him, another to Sutton, both dated for "after you find each other." His hands trembled slightly as he lifted the letters. Victoria's handwriting was strong and clear, written before illness had weakened her. He immediately called Sutton. "Can you come to the tower? There's something you need to see." She must have heard something in his voice, because she replied without hesitation, "I'm on my way." While waiting, Barnaby sat in Victoria's old leather chair, the letters heavy in his hands. The office renovation continued around him, but he barely noticed the workers carefully removing old fixtures and preparing for updates. Sutton arrived wearing a gold silk blouse that caught the morning light, making her skin glow like burnished bronze. She stopped in the doorway, taking in the partially dismantled office and Barnaby's expression. "What is it?" Wordlessly, he held up the letters. Sutton's eyes widened as she recognized Victoria's handwriting. She crossed the room slowly, as if drawn by an invisible force. "When did you find these?" "Just now, behind the old panels." He gestured to the open safe. "There are more, but these were meant for us. Together." Sutton sank into the chair opposite him, emotion playing across her face. After everything they'd been through, the merger negotiations, their growing love, the scandals and vindication, Victoria still had one last message for them. "Should we read them here?" she asked softly. Barnaby stood, offering his hand. "Number I know somewhere better." They took his private elevator to the rooftop garden, a space Victoria had designed herself, filled with roses and quiet corners for contemplation. The Manhattan skyline spread out around them, but the garden felt like a world apart, peaceful and intimate. They sat together on a marble bench, the letters between them. By mutual, unspoken agreement, they decided to read their individual letters first, sharing this moment but allowing each other privacy for Victoria's personal messages. Barnaby opened his envelope carefully, preserving her seal. The pages inside were filled with Victoria's elegant script. "My dearest Barnaby, if you're reading this, then everything I hope for has begun to unfold. You've met Sutton, truly met her, not just as a business connection, but as the extraordinary woman she is. I've watched both of you from different angles of life, seeing in each what the other needs. You're probably wondering if I orchestrated everything. The merger, your meeting, your growing feelings. The truth is both simpler and more complex. I saw the possibility of you, of what you could mean to each other, but love can't be orchestrated. It can only be given room to grow. What I did orchestrate was the chance, the investments in sterling tech, the subtle connections I built between your worlds. Those were my gifts to you both. But what you've done with those chances, the love you've found, that's entirely your own creation. I know you, my love. I know you've probably struggled with guilt, with feeling disloyal to my memory. Don't. The greatest gift you could give me is to find happiness again, to love deeply and without reservation. Sutton has the strength to match you, the brilliance to challenge you, and the heart to love you as completely as you deserve. Build something extraordinary together, not just in business, but in life. Let my memory be a blessing to your love, not a shadow over it. I've loved you completely, and now I give you my complete blessing to love again, forever in your heart, Victoria. Tears fell onto the paper as Barnaby read, his heart full of gratitude for the remarkable woman who had loved him enough to ensure his future happiness. Beside him, Sutton was similarly moved as she read her letter. My dearest Sutton, from the first day you walked into my office at MIT, brilliant and determined, I knew you were special, not just for your incredible mind or your innovative spirit, but for your heart, that beautiful, fierce heart that refuses to accept limitations. I've watched you grow from promising student to powerful CEO, and my pride in you has grown with every step. But I've also seen the loneliness that comes with being extraordinary, the weight of carrying dreams too big for others to understand. That's why I know you and Barnaby will find each other. You're both forces of nature, brilliant, driven, and carrying the same capacity for deep love that makes you vulnerable even as it makes you strong. Don't let fear hold you back from this love. Don't let the world's expectations or your own doubts stand in the way of what could be the most beautiful partnership either of you has known. I'm entrusting you with not just my company's legacy, but with Barnaby's heart. Love him completely, challenge him constantly, and build a future that would have been impossible for either of you alone. You've made me proud in business. Now make me proud in love. With all my faith in you, Victoria. When they finished reading their individual letters, they turned to the third envelope, marked for them both. Together they opened it, their hands touching as they unfolded the pages. My dearest ones, if you're reading this together, then my deepest wishes have come true. You found each other, moved past the barriers of business and society, and recognized the extraordinary possibility that lies between you. I'm writing this in my final days, when seeing clearly becomes both harder and easier. Harder because time is short, easier because what truly matters becomes crystal clear. What matters is love, not just the kind that burns hot and fast, but the kind that builds empires of the heart. The kind that sees past surface differences to the core of compatibility, that challenges and supports in equal measure. You two are my greatest legacy, not the companies, not the innovations, but the potential for joy you can bring to each other's lives. Barnaby, you'll find in Sutton the intellectual, equal and emotional complement you need. Sutton, you'll find in Barnaby the partner strong enough to support your dreams while having dreams of his own. Together, you'll create something extraordinary. The merger of your companies is just the beginning. The true merger will be of your hearts, your visions, your lives. Don't waste time questioning whether this was fate or manipulation. Love, when it's real, transcends its beginnings. What matters is not how you found each other, but what you choose to build together. I give you my complete blessing, my absolute joy in your happiness. Let my memory be a foundation for your love, not a barrier to it. Build your empire of innovation. Create your legacy of love. Make each other as happy as you've both made me. With all my love and blessing, Victoria. As they finished reading the final letter, Sutton and Barnaby turned to each other, tears streaming down both their faces. Without words, they came together, holding each other as the full weight of Victoria's final gift washed over them. She knew, Sutton whispered against his chest. All along, she knew we'd need each other. Barnaby's arms tightened around her. She knew we'd complete each other, in business and in love. When their lips met, it was a kiss of revelation, deep with understanding, rich with blessing, and full of promise for the future Victoria had seen for them. The roses bloomed around them in her garden, their scent a reminder of her continuing presence in their lives. The chapter ends, as they sit together in Victoria's garden, her letters carefully preserved between them, their hearts fuller than ever with the love she had blessed. The revelation wasn't just in her words, but in the depth of care she had taken to ensure their happiness, to give them permission to love completely and without reservation. As the sun set over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, they held each other, knowing that their love story had been written in the stars long before they recognized it themselves. Victoria's final gift hadn't been the letters themselves, but the freedom to love without guilt, to build their future with her blessing as their foundation. Chapter 11. Reconciliation. The private gardens of the Brooklyn Botanical Garden had been Victoria's favorite retreat. On this golden autumn evening, as the setting sun painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, Barnaby and Sutton walked hand in hand through the paths she had loved so much. They had reserved the entire garden for this intimate ceremony, not a wedding, not yet, but something equally profound. Sutton wore a flowing dress of deep purple silk that caught the evening light, making her skin glow like burnished gold. Her locks were crowned with tiny white roses, Victoria's favorite flowers. Barnaby was elegant in a charcoal suit, but had foregone his usual tie, the informality matching the personal nature of this moment. They had spent the week since finding Victoria's letters, planning this private tribute. No press, no business associates, no corporate formality, just the two of them, Victoria's memory and the love that had bloomed from her final gift. This was her favorite spot, Barnaby said softly as they reached a secluded alcove surrounded by climbing roses. A marble bench sat beneath an arbor, exactly as Victoria had described it in her journals. She would come here to think, to plan, to dream. Sutton squeezed his hand, feeling the emotion in his voice. She told me about this place once, said it was where she felt closest to the truth of things. They sat together on the bench, Victoria's letters carefully preserved in a handcrafted leather portfolio between them. The evening air was sweet with the scent of roses, a gentle breeze carrying whispers of memory and promise. "Should we read them again?" Sutton asked, her fingers tracing the embossed initials on the portfolio, VB intertwined with their own. Barnaby nodded, his arms sliding around her waist as she opened the portfolio. Together they read Victoria's words again, but this time not in silence. They took turns reading aloud, sharing the impact of each passage, letting their voices give new life to her final messages. When Sutton read the part about being entrusted with Barnaby's heart, her voice caught with emotion. His hand tightened on her waist, pulling her closer. "She was right about you," he murmured, "about your strength, your brilliance, your capacity for love." Sutton turned to face him, her eyes shining with tears and starlight. "She was right about us, about how we'd need each other, complete each other." As the sun sank lower, casting long shadows through the garden, they shared their own letters, ones they had written to Victoria in response to her final messages. Barnaby went first, his deep voice rough with emotion. "Dearest Victoria, your final gift to us was more than blessing. It was freedom. Freedom to love without guilt, to build something new without forgetting what came before. You saw in Sutton what I needed before I knew I needed it. A partner who challenges me, inspires me, and loves me with the same fierce dedication you showed. I promise to honor your vision for us both. To love Sutton completely, to support her dreams while pursuing our shared vision, to build the kind of partnership you always believed was possible. Your memory isn't a shadow over our love. It's the foundation that helped bring us together. Thank you for loving me enough to ensure my future happiness, and for choosing someone so perfectly suited to share that future with me. Forever grateful, Barnaby." Sutton wiped tears from her cheeks before reading her own letter. "My dear Victoria, you were more than a mentor. You were a visionary who saw possibilities I couldn't imagine for myself. Your faith in my abilities gave me the courage to build sterling tech, but your insight into my heart gave me something even more precious, the courage to love Barnaby. I promise to be worthy of both your professional and personal legacy, to love Barnaby with the same depth of understanding you showed him, to challenge him when he needs challenging, and to support him with the same unwavering faith you had in us both. Thank you for seeing what we could mean to each other and for giving us the gift of your blessing to discover it ourselves. With eternal gratitude, Sutton. As twilight deepened around them, they performed their private ceremony. They placed their letters in crystal vases on either side of the bench, along with white roses and sprigs of lavender, Victoria's signature scent. Then, standing before the arbor where she had spent so many hours dreaming of their future, they shared their promises to each other. Barnaby took both Sutton's hands in his blue eyes intense in the fading light. Under these roses, in this place that Victoria loved, I promise to love you completely and without reservation, to build our future together while honoring the past that brought us here, to cherish every moment of the gift she saw possible between us. Tears slipped down Sutton's cheeks as she responded, "In this garden of memories and new beginnings, I promise to love you with all the passion and dedication Victoria knew I possessed, to be your partner in all things, in business, in innovation, in life, to create something extraordinary together, just as she dreamed we would." Their kiss was gentle but profound, blessed by the setting sun and the memory of the remarkable woman who had seen their love's possibility. As darkness fell, tiny lights twinkled to life throughout the garden, another surprise Barnaby had arranged, transforming the space into a magical realm of starlight and shadows. They danced together beneath the stars, no music needed beyond the beating of their hearts. The portfolio containing Victoria's letters rested on the bench, a testament to the past's blessing on their future. "I want to be married here," Sutton said softly as they swayed together, "in this garden, surrounded by her roses and her memory." Barnaby's arms tightened around her. "In the spring," he agreed. "When the roses are in full bloom, she would love that." As if in response to his words, a warm breeze swept through the garden, carrying the sweet scent of roses. They both smiled, feeling Victoria's presence in the perfect moment. Later, as they walked back through the moonlit paths, they stopped to place final tribute, a small plaque on the marble bench, inscribed with words from Victoria's letter. "Love, when it's real, transcends its beginnings. What matters is not how you found each other, but what you choose to build together." The chapter ends as they leave the garden hand in hand, their hearts full of peace and promise. The reconciliation hadn't just been with Victoria's memory, but with their own path to love. Her blessing, finally fully embraced, had transformed from a weight of expectation into a foundation of strength. Above them, the stars twinkled like diamonds scattered across black velvet, while behind them, the garden kept its gentle vigil over their promises. Victoria's roses would bloom again in the spring, witnessing their wedding day. But for now, this private ceremony of reconciliation had given them everything they needed: peace with the past, joy in the present, and boundless hope for their future together. Chapter 12. New Beginnings. The Brooklyn Botanical Garden bloomed with thousands of white roses under a perfect spring sunset. Victoria's favorite garden had been transformed into an enchanted paradise, with crystal chandeliers suspended from ancient tree branches and soft lights twinkling like earthbound stars. The scent of roses mingled with jasmine on the warm evening breeze. Barnaby stood beneath an arch of intertwined white roses and purple orchids, his heart racing as he awaited his bride. The intimate gathering of their closest friends and family created a cocoon of love around them. In the front row, an empty chair held Victoria's journals, bound in white leather, her presence felt in every detail of this magical evening. When Sutton appeared at the garden's entrance, time seemed to stop. She wore a gown of ivory silk that made her skin glow like burnished gold in the sunset light. Her locks were crowned with tiny white roses and threaded with gold, cascading down her back like a waterfall of stars. But it was her smile, radiant with joy and love, that took Barnaby's breath away. As she walked toward him along a path strewn with rose petals, their eyes locked and the world faded away. This moment was everything Victoria had dreamed for them, everything they had fought for, everything love could be. Their vows were deeply personal, words flowing from hearts too full to contain. "Sutton," Barnaby's voice carried across the hushed garden, "you awakened my heart when I thought it was forever silenced. Your brilliant mind challenges me, your fierce spirit inspires me, and your beautiful soul completes me. I promise to love you with the same passion we bring to innovation, the same dedication we give to our dreams, and the same fearlessness that brought us together. You are my partner in all things, in business, in life, in love." Tears sparkled in Sutton's eyes as she responded, "Barnaby, you showed me that true partnership means being stronger together than apart. Your strength supports my dreams, your wisdom guides my path, and your love lights up my world. I promise to challenge you, inspire you, and love you with everything I am. Together, we'll build something more extraordinary than either of us could imagine alone." As they exchanged rings, the setting sun painted the sky in shades of rose and gold. Victoria's sapphire gleamed on Sutton's finger alongside her new wedding band, past and present united in perfect harmony. Their first kiss as husband and wife was met with joyful applause, but they were lost in their own world. As they parted, a warm breeze swept through the garden, carrying the scent of roses, Victoria's final blessing on their union. The celebration moved to a crystal pavilion in the heart of the garden, where they danced beneath the stars to Moon River, Victoria's favorite song. Barnaby held Sutton close, marveling at how perfectly they fit together. "Happy," he murmured against her temple. "Beyond words," she replied, lifting her face for another kiss. "Victoria would have loved this." "She did love this," he smiled. "She saw it before we did. The power of our love, the beauty of our partnership, the magic of our future together." As the night deepened, they slipped away to a private corner of the garden. Moonlight silvered the roses around them as Barnaby pulled his new wife into his arms. "I have something for you," he said softly, presenting her with an antique key. Sutton's eyes widened as she recognized it. The key to Victoria's private garden atop Bartholomew Tower. "But you've never given anyone access." "It's yours now," he whispered. "Our special place, blessed by her memory, ready for our future." Their kiss was tender yet passionate, full of promises and dreams. Above them, stars twinkled like diamonds scattered across black velvet, while behind them, Victoria's roses kept their gentle vigil. The chapter ends as they depart for their honeymoon in Santorini, their love having transformed from a corporate merger to something far more precious, a true merger of hearts, minds, and souls. Their empire of innovation would change the world, but their empire of love would be their greatest legacy. As their private jet soared toward the Mediterranean sunset, Sutton opened Victoria's journal one last time, finding an entry they had somehow missed before. "To my beloveds, on your wedding day, love freely, dream boldly, and know that my blessing shines on you like starlight. Your love story was written in the stars long before you found each other. I just helped you read the constellations. Be extraordinary together. All my love, Victoria." Barnaby pulled Sutton close as happy tears fell on the journal's pages. Below them, the Atlantic glittered like scattered diamonds, while ahead their future beckoned, bright with promise, rich with love, and blessed by an angel who had seen their heart's truth before they did. Their love story had begun with a corporate merger, but it would continue forever as a testament to the power of true partnership, the beauty of destined love, and the magic that happens when two extraordinary souls find their perfect match. As Santorini's whitewashed buildings came into view, gleaming like pearls against the azure sea, Barnaby and Sutton held each other close, knowing that their greatest adventure was just beginning. Their love would write new chapters, create new dreams, and build new empires of business, of innovation, and most importantly, of the heart. Subscribe if you loved.